Pilipinas.
Where we go above and beyond the headlines tonight on the program. With infections rising dramatically and genome sequencing still to catch up, the government is now assuming community transmission of the highly contagious Omicron variant, as 3 provinces near Metro Manila also raised the alert level by a notch. The girl who skipped quarantine to party in Poblacion in Makati now facing criminal complaints along with 8 others for allegedly violating health protocols. And the Philippine Olympic Committee vowing to support pole vaulter EJ Obiena while his sports association moves to drop him from the national team. The Health Department moving as if there is already community transmission of the more infectious Omicron COVID-19 variant. Health spokesperson Maria Rosario Vergere says definitive evidence is still needed before issuing a formal declaration, but she points out the signs are there.
We are doing random and explosive sampling because we have this limitation. But for now, we are now assuming that Omicron is in our communities, and we are having this transmission within our communities already. According to our experts in the other countries, the cases doubled every 2 days in other countries, and that is what we are seeing right now. And the assumption is there, Omicron is in our communities already.
To date, we have 14 confirmed cases of the new variant. 3 were found locally, while the other 11 from returning overseas Filipinos. But Vergere says there are initial projections that infections driven by Omicron will peak at the end of this month, but did not disclose exact figures. From August to September last year, cases hit more than 20,000 per day during the surge fueled by the Delta variant. The spike caused by Omicron, however, is seen to surpass that figure. Now, So what do we know so far about the characteristics of Omicron? The Health Department says it is 8 times more transmissible than Delta. Vergere tells CNN Philippines symptoms caused by the new variant may appear in 2 to 3 days earlier than the 5-day incubation period for Delta. Based on studies overseas, Omicron is only causing mild illnesses so far, but experts warn it is spreading at an unprecedented rate. Now, that is why we must not let our guards down and continue to wear masks, observe physical distancing, practice proper hand hygiene, and only go out if necessary. Now, the country's case tally tops 5,000 today, the first time in more than 2 months. The Health Department logged 5,434 new cases, pushing the total count to over 2,800,000. Of the new infections, more than 99% occurred in the past 2 weeks. Nearly 3/4 of them were in Metro Manila. The positivity rate rose to 26.2%, meaning more than 1/4 of the people being tested have positive results. Today's tally excludes data from 16 laboratories, which failed to submit their reports on time. The country's top cop also testing positive for the coronavirus. National Police Chief General John R. Carlos announces he, along with his driver and aide, caught COVID-19. Carlos had fever, chills, and sweating on Sunday, but by Monday, only lower back pains remain. Emergency room and hospital admissions going up in Metro Manila by half in just a week as more people catch the coronavirus. What should you do if you are exposed to a COVID patient or get infected as well? Carolyn Bonkin walks us through the government's recent guidelines.
If you've been exposed to a COVID-infected person, even for just a few seconds, you're considered a close contact. Based on the Health Department's latest guidelines, you need to quarantine for 7 days if fully vaccinated. If not, it will be for 14 days from exposure. Regardless of COVID test results, you have to complete the quarantine period.
Ang atin pong mga DOH, ang atin pong cluster po ng National Task Force, nagbibigay po tayo ng libreng testing kits sa ating mga local governments. Meron din po tayong PhilHealth benefit.
RT-PCR and antigen testing must be supervised by healthcare professionals. For those taking antigen test, a positive result means you likely have COVID. If negative but symptomatic, you need to isolate and get an RT-PCR test. If you're a close contact but asymptomatic, you have to be tested on the 5th day with RT-PCR. If you were not exposed and have no symptoms, then an antigen test is unreliable.
Dapat tama po yung test nyo and tama po ang timing ng inyong pagtetest para po mas maging accurate ang atin po mga resulta. Kapag tayo ay may simptomas, dyan po pinaka-accurate ang resulta ng ating antigen test.
Regardless of vaccination status, if you tested positive but have mild, moderate, or no symptoms, you need to isolate for 10 days. During this period, the DOH says you're still infectious. Consult your doctor as soon as you test positive.
Protect our family, protect our community from this virus, from further spreading by isolating immediately.
If your symptoms are severe or critical, isolation will last for 21 days and you must be admitted to a hospital. While asymptomatic and mild cases may stay at home or in a temporary treatment and quarantine facility. Rest, drink lots of water, eat healthy, and drink maintenance medicines. You may also take medicines for fever. A health department reminder, antibiotics are not effective against COVID. Monitor yourself and if possible, with the help of a healthcare provider. Watch out for danger signs like breathing difficulty, chest pain or tightness, confusion, difficulty in speaking or moving. Here are the DOH hospital hotlines for emergencies and telemedicine consultations. They may be accessed online or through the phone.
Meron po tayong mga telemedicine services, meron po tayong hotlines ng ating local government health facilities para ito na lang muna po ang ating gamitin para hindi tayo mag-congest sa ating mga ospital.
Considered recovered are asymptomatics who remain without symptoms for 10 days from testing date, and mild, severe, and critical cases with no symptoms and clinically recovered for 3 days. Caroline Bongkin, CNN Philippines.
The health department says 100,000 tests should be conducted per day, instructing laboratories to operate 24/7 if they can. In today's tally, based on reports from January 2nd, only around 25,000 people were tested. Now, the surge in cases also prompting the government to place more areas back under restrictions. Beginning tomorrow until January 15, Malacanang says Bulacan, Cavite, and Rizal will also revert to alert level 3, citing a sharp increase in infections in these provinces. Metro Manila returned to the same alert level yesterday. Under this classification, face-to-face classes and contact sports are prohibited, and operational capacities for some establishments are scaled down. Travel, meanwhile, is subject to local government restrictions. The coronavirus is also spreading rapidly among rail line personnel and ports employees, as Amor Santos tells us over 200 of them are now positive.
As commuters get back to work after the holiday season, frontline government workers get tested to ensure the riding public safety. Out of more than 200 MRT3 personnel, 40 tested positive in their antigen tests taken Monday. At the Philippine National Railways, 45 more operating personnel tested positive Tuesday morning. This brings the tally to 128, including 83 office workers. All of them do not have symptoms according to PNR management.
Naka-isolate po sila ngayon sa kanilang mga bahay. Tapos po yung mga empleyado po namin na nagpahayag na yung kanilang pong bahay ay maliit o marami silang kahalubilo, mga may bata at matanda, nire-refer po natin sa kanilang mga LGU for isolation.
At the Philippine Ports Authority, 45 employees also had positive antigen test results. PPA General Manager Jay Santiago says they will take RT-PCR tests after 5 days to confirm COVID-19 infection. This could be done earlier if symptoms show up. Antigen testing also kicked off for LRT employees.
So far naman, based naman doon sa regular na COVID monitoring namin as of January 1, dalawa lang yung positive namin doon sa aming regular na monitoring. So we will see later on kapag natapos natin lahat itong antigen testing natin.
And soon, a random testing for commuters.
Yes, that's also true. The MRT will be conducting, not only the MRT, the rail system in MRT, LRT 1, LRT 2, and PNR will be conducting random testing, antigen testing for their passengers. These are only for those who are willing or who volunteer for the antigen testing.
Under Alert Level 3, public utility vehicles are allowed up to 70% operating capacity. Commuters are required to wear face masks. No talking, no phone calls, and no eating to prevent the transmission of the virus inside PUVs. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
2 weeks before Congress resumes session, the House of Representatives goes on lockdown because of the threat of Omicron. House Secretary General Mark Leandro Mendoza says on-site operations will resume next week. Over at the Senate, Senate President Tito Soto sees no need to lock down just yet, but suspends hearings scheduled tomorrow. The Supreme Court also adjusting this year's bar exams. Instead of holding it for 4 Sundays, the court is cutting it down to just 2 days on January 23 and 25, which fall on a Sunday and a Tuesday. The court strongly urging examinees to self-quarantine beginning January 9th. They will be required to undergo antigen and swab tests 48 hours before the exams, and those testing positive will be barred from exam centers. Up ahead on Newsnight, authorities pressing charges against the so-called Poblacion girl and several others, including her parents. And some pharmaceutical companies and groups report a shortage of paracetamol brands, but the health department says there is still enough supply of the medicine. More on that when we return. Stay tuned.
Gringo Honasan po. Sa pagbangon ng mga Pilipino, saludo ako sa mga taong patuloy na humaharap sa hamon ng pagbabago.
Bilang isang ina, handa akong gawin ang lahat para sa kaligtasan ng aking mga anak.
Pandemya man, tuloy pa rin ang serbisyo para malinis ang kapaligiran.
Serbisyong publiko para sa kaligtasan ng lahat.
Sa panahon ng krisis, ikaw, ako, magtulungan tayo. Gringo Honasan po. Saludo ako sa Pilipino.
Coffee mix to ignite my day. Hi guys! Lagi akong focused, active, at am extraordinary. Because the most important things in life deserve nothing less. MX3 Coffee Mix, my choice.
Welcome back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. New developments in the probe on the so-called Poblacion girl. Authorities are pressing charges against Gwyneth Ann Chua and 8 others for violating quarantine protocols. The Criminal Investigation and Detection Group filed criminal complaints against Chua, her parents, and several personnel of the hotel where she was quarantined. Investigators say Chua checked in at the Berjaya Hotel in Makati on December 23rd after flying in from the U.S., but she was fetched by her own father less than an hour later. They also found out that Chua returned to the hotel on Christmas Day, this time with her mother. The CIDG said Chua is currently isolated in a facility within Metro Manila after testing positive for COVID-19 on December 26th. The Interior Department said 7 out of her 15 close contacts also tested positive. While the country's healthcare utilization rate is still considered low risk despite rising COVID-19 cases, hospitals are now beefing up measures against a potential surge in patients. Efforts are underway to make more beds in facilities available, even as the health department notes hospital capacity has not yet reached 50%.
The IATF has started preparing. We started mobilizing our teams para po yung ating mga ospital makapag-stockpile ng gamot, expand the number of beds. Ayun pong ating local governments, we met with them already so that they can intensify the response in the community. Ang pinaka-importante, we have activated our telemedicine services in all of our hospitals. We are encouraging all of our citizens, kapag mild ang symptoms natin, let's use telemedicine. Do not go to the hospitals yet. Let's preserve our hospitals for our severe and critical cases.
Would like to pursue further is to intensify our prevention, detection, and isolation for this positive patient, and definitely also the compliance of the minimum health standards, because this is the only way that we can lessen the transmission.
The Health Secretary says there are 5,000 COVID-19 patients currently confined in hospitals. These patients are a mix of mild, moderate, severe, and critical cases. Now, the Health Department is saying paracetamol supply is enough, even as some brands run out on the shelves amid rising COVID-19 cases. Unilab says some of its brands are out of stock in select drugstores because of extraordinary demand. The company notes it is working to replenish supply as soon as possible. Unilab is the manufacturer of BioFlu, Neozep, and Solmux. The vice president of the Pharmaceutical and Healthcare Association of the Philippines says there is a temporary shortage of certain paracetamol brands in some areas. She appeals to everyone not to hoard medicine. The DOH is now urging people consider buying generic brands instead. The agency notes paracetamol has many alternatives in the market. Now, the controversial Dolomite Beach in Manila Bay has reopened to fully vaccinated individuals. Rex and Media tells us how the first day of its reopening turned out in light of the rising COVID-19 cases in Metro Manila.
Despite drawing flack for the supposedly untimely project done in the middle of a raging pandemic, the government reopens to the public the controversial Dolomite Beach in Manila Bay. Some visitors don't mind that the beach is artificial, as they enjoy posing for snapshots under the sun. A few even came from nearby provinces, just like 86-year-old Patricia Valenzuela from Bulacan.
Hindi ko na kailangan pala magpunta sa Boracay. Ito pa lang Boracay, dinala na sa Manila. Ako naman po yung nag-iingat. Kanya po kami hindi sumabay sa mga karamihan.
A number of visitors notice that the water is clearer, far from its murky condition years back.
Parang hindi mo maisip na nasa Manila Bay ka. Nag-iba yung ano niya, yung appearance niya. Kung punong-puno, hindi naman kami papasok.
Swimming is not yet allowed despite better water quality. Water is still heavily contaminated, and unhealthy particles that may cause illnesses should be reduced by a substantial amount for the area to be cleared for swimming. Fisherfolk group Pamalakaya has a different view about the project. It says the Environment Department shouldn't have reopened the beach, and money for the project should have been spent for cash aid for poor families suffering from the pandemic. The group adds the project puts public health at risk. The DNR says visitors are limited at certain time slots and they must be fully vaccinated. They also have to register online a day ahead of the visit. Walk-ins are allowed depending on available slots. Visitors can only stay on the beach for an hour on 4 time slots in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. Rex Remitio, CNN Philippines.
The Commission on Elections is set to tackle on Wednesday the petition to reopen the filing of certificates of candidacy for the 2022 polls. The PDP Laban faction, led by Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi, had made that appeal more than 2 months after the filing of COCs ended last October 8th. The group also asked the poll body to delay the printing of ballots while petitions against certain aspirants remain unresolved. Comlic described the group's request as unprecedented.
It's a little tricky. This question, because there are a lot of issues involved in it. There's a lot of kumbaga, consequences to opening up the COC filing once again.
The PDP-Laban faction had initially fielded Senators Bato de la Rosa and Bongo as president and vice president, but both eventually withdrew from the race. A group called the National Coalition for Life and Democracy is insisting on postponing the May 9 polls to 2025 in the face of rising COVID-19 cases and the threat of the Omicron variant. Its lawyers filed an urgent request before the COMELEC to decide on their proposal. They say early campaign activities of 2022 aspirants put Filipino voters at risk. However, the poll body is unlikely to budge.
And if you're saying that the Constitution should be ignored simply because you want to stay in power, then you have a big problem. The COMELEC sees no reason to postpone the election.
Nung final namin ito, tinatawanan kami, tinatawanan ng grupo namin. Pero ano, ang nangyari ngayon, December, ang COVID record sa Metro Manila was only 500. With all the campaignings, with all the actions being done illegally, contrary to AITF rules and regulations, kampanya rito, motorcade dito.
COMELEC spokesman James Jimenez also commends politicians who've been putting their campaign activities on hold and asked others to follow suit. The body is sticking to campaign rules which kick in by February, limiting what candidates can do depending on the alert level classification in an area. At least 4 presidential aspirants have put campaign activities on hold amid increasing COVID-19 cases, which also hit a number of their staff. Vice President Leni Robredo said they will use this time to give aid to typhoon victims, while the Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte tandem led volunteers to distribute medicines to hospitals. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno and Senator Manny Pacquiao also postponed campaign events. We'll have the latest on this year's elections, from the push to reopen the filing of COCs to disqualification cases against presidential aspirant Bongbong Marcos. Catch my interviews with COMELEC spokesperson James Jimenez and Senator Amy Marcos tonight on Politics as Usual at 8:30, your weekly political appointment fix. Straight ahead on Newsnight, pole vaulting sensation EJ Obiena is in danger of being removed from the national team after a recommendation from the Athletics Track and Field Association. And an update on the 3 BTS members who tested positive for the coronavirus. Keep it here on CNN Philippines.
The possibility of a fresh start brought about by the new year always inspires change, including leading a healthier lifestyle and losing weight.
You have to prefer the vegetables, and you have to eat fresh. So that's one thing that we have to adhere to every day.
You have to develop a fitness plan that can actually fit your budget. It should, for all, fitness is a lifestyle change.
Catch us on Med Talk Health Talk on CNN Philippines.
Welcome back to Newsnight. The Philippine Athletics Track and Field Association recommends dropping Olympic pole vaulter EJ Obiena from the team pool effective immediately. Alongside this is a recommendation for an estafa complaint against the athlete over funding for coaching fees amounting to about 360,000 pesos. Philippine Olympic Committee President Bambol Tolentino said they will make sure Obiena gets to compete in all major global tournaments. Last week, the POC declared Patafa chief Philip Wico persona non grata over allegations he made against Obiena on falsifying liquidation reports. Also making the rounds on social media, Chris Aquino announcing the end of her relationship with former Interior Secretary Mel Sarmiento. Celebrities left messages of support for the actress. On her Instagram post, Chris posted Mel's text messages saying he experienced bubble fatigue while staying indoors to protect her from the virus. Chris also talked about seeking treatment for her autoimmune disease and asked for privacy at this time. The two first announced their engagement in October. Good news for K-pop fans. BTS members RM, Jin, and Suga have fully recovered from COVID-19. Suga finished quarantine on Monday, while RM and Jin followed a day after. The three tested positive following their arrival in South Korea from the U.S. after concerts in Los Angeles. The group's agency said RM and Suga were asymptomatic, and Jin briefly experienced a mild fever. And more news in music. A late rock icon's body of work sells for upwards of $200 million. CNN's David Daniel has that and more on the Hollywood Minute.
David Bowie's estate has sold the publishing rights to the legendary singer's catalog to Warner Chappell. Variety puts the value of the deal at more than $250 million. It covers every song Bowie ever wrote, including those on the posthumous album Toy, which comes out Friday. Bowie would have turned 75 on Saturday. The Weeknd is also putting out new music on Friday, his long-teased album Dawn FM. The artist revealed the release date and a snippet of music in this announcement trailer.
You've been in the dark for way too long. It's time to walk into the light and accept your fate with open arms.
They must represent all of us.
Whoopi Goldberg now represents a growing group, celebs who've tested positive for COVID-19. Her co-host on The View, Joy Behar, made the announcement on Monday's episode, saying since she's vaxxed and boosted, her symptoms have been very, very mild, but we're being super cautious. In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
And that is it for now. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.